The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Kipper Davis with Access. I'm glad everyone can join us today. Really looking forward to this presentation with Ryan Crocker. Have him on the line. What we're going to do is sit tight for a few minutes and make sure everyone gets a chance to join, and then I'll come back on and turn everything over to him. But please sit tight, go grab some more coffee, answer some emails, and then we'll get rolling. All right, guys, let's get rolling on this. Like I said earlier, my name is Skipper Davis, and I'm an account manager here at Access. And just wanted to say thank you for everyone that's able to take the time and jump on today and listen to Ryan Crocker talk about Western Health's story with Access and what they're doing. So really looking forward to you guys listening in on his presentation and getting an understanding of what their project has looked like with Access and what they've been able to accomplish and what they're looking to do in the future with some of our new functionality and solutions. So I do have Ryan Crocker on. I'll let him introduce himself in just a minute. I want to go over some housekeeping items. If you haven't noticed yet, you guys are all on mute. So we have a large group on today. So in order to manage the masses, we need to keep you guys on mute, but that does not mean that you can't ask questions. We would love for you guys to ask away throughout the presentation, and what we'll do is we'll have some time at the end with a Q&A, and I have Lindsay on from Access as well, and she's going to be the one that reads off your questions to Ryan and I, and we'll both address those accordingly. All right. So in order to ask questions throughout the presentation, on the right-hand side in your GoToMeeting window, there is a chat box. All right. And so what you guys can do is get in there and enter in your questions throughout the presentation, and Lindsay will kind of keep track of those, and then at the end go through and read off each one of those so that we can answer those accordingly. So again, if anything pops up, you have a question about something, just type that into that chat box, and then we'll address those at the end. All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and kick things off. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ryan Crocker and let him take it from here.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Kipper said, my name is Ryan Crocker. I'm the Regional Manager with Health Information with Western Health. I'll show you a map in a second, but I'm located on a small island off the east coast of Canada, where today it's sunny and currently 68 Fahrenheit, the height of summer season here in Western Newfoundland. So feel free to take pity on me and send donations for any kind of trip to warmer climates, because I will accept them. Today we're going to talk about our recent journey down the road of form standardization and how, I guess, the new forms project is one of the final pieces that we needed to put in place to get where Western Health would be happy to say that we had an EHR. This presentation is very similar to one I recently did at Muse, so if anyone online saw that presentation, I apologize for the repetition. Otherwise, let's dive straight in here. So Western Health, like I said, is on the west coast of the island of Newfoundland. It's the second largest of 4 provincial RHAs, or regional health authorities. I apologize for the text being cut off, but I'm on my secondary computer here, and I've just noticed that some of the text is cut off on the end. In terms of size, we're actually quite small in terms of patient size. We only have about 80,000, I think the most recent estimate is somewhere around 93,000 people in our catchment area, anywhere between 3,300 and 3,500 staff, and only just shy of 300 acute care beds in the entire region. So volume-wise, we're not actually that large, but if you look at the geographic size, it's hard to get a sense of scale on this map. Let's go from our northernmost facility to our southernmost facility that you can drive to is approximately 6 hours. And some of our smaller clinics that we staff occasionally here on the south coast are only reachable by helicopter, typically once a week or once a month, depending on the service provided. So some of the challenges we face here, not in terms of patient volume, but in terms of geographic location, and we have an increasing demographics of above 55. A lot of our younger people move away from the island, and all the old people come home to retire. So that alters how we provide our care. And of course, availability of services. We can't have full services at all these locations, so our specialists and a lot of our higher-end technology tends to be at our main facility here in Corner Brook, or our secondary facility where I'm located at Stephenville. So people have to travel for a lot of specialist appointments and so on and so forth. So here's where I am, small island off the east coast of Canada, just south of all that white ice and snow. Winters are long and terrible. This summer is cold and damp. Like I said, pity me if you can. So this slide is not going to be a surprise to most people. Currently here in Western Health, we see a lot of things that other people have seen in our health records or in IM departments, a lot of paper-heavy processes. We keep everything. Someone in their wisdom back in 2001 at the provincial government level decided that due to research requirements and whatnot, that we would not destroy anything related to health information. So we have not destroyed a piece of paper since 2000, 2001. And before that, our retention periods and processes were a little bit blurred or non-existent. So I still, believe it or not, have death charts of patients who passed away in the 50s and 60s. So that poses a problem in terms of not only security that we still have these existing, but we actually have to store them and put them somewhere. Our health records departments currently occupy a large footprint in our facilities. And when we did a workplace analysis, we realized that we have a lot of staff members doing duplicate duties and sometimes not even quite sure why they're doing the duty in the first place. The common excuse of, oh, it's always been done this way, or no one has shown us a different way of doing it, came up quite frequently during our workplace analysis. So we have poor resource utilization. And with a strictly paper record, naturally we have recognized that we do have instances where we have missing information or missing charts or parts of charts, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a snapshot of the health records facility at one of our main health records department, at one of our main facilities, currently occupying 5,100 square feet. And this is just what we term our active patient section. So any patient who's been seen in this facility within the last 7 years. All inactive and death charts are kept in a separate location of approximately the same size. So we occupy a significant footprint of the current facility. We are in the process of building a new facility, which is one of the primary reasons of change. What's forced us down this road. Initial plans for the new hospital gave health records approximately 1,500 to 2,000 square feet for storage and offices. So as you can imagine, we panicked for a minute. The assumption was that by the time the new hospital would be built in 2017 to 2019, we would be on our way or already to a point where we would exist as a facility with electronic health records. So that forced us to look at our EHR roadmap and kind of speed some things through and push some projects through a little quicker than we had anticipated. As an upside to that, we realized that we would get improved data quality and completeness in our record, and we'd also be able to demonstrate enhanced security and reliability to government oversight. So we realized that, you know what, now is the time to start the journey to get a comprehensive electronic health record. But like I said, we weren't quite sure how we were going to get there back in 2011. Me being a visual person, I had to draw it up. So I came up with this very high-level flow chart of how we were going to get to our electronic health record. Now, this is extremely high level, and we all know that within each of these blocks we see there's projects and sub-projects and interactions and things that cannot be anticipated until you dive into it. But at a high level, if we split everything into current and future information or historical information, you can treat them each differently. On this chart, green indicates project has been completed. Red indicates that we're not going to do it. And yellow indicates currently in process. So if you notice, this one can probably be green now, the physician portal. That has been basically completed and is in process of being rolled out. So physicians have the ability to see all of their inpatients' records, notes, assessments via anywhere, really, anywhere with an internet connection. They can log in and check on their patients from home, from vacation, from wherever they happen to be. We've decided the only red section you see here is scanning and archiving of historical information. We decided that when we would start the process of scanning and archiving and moving our records over to electronic, that we had to draw the line in the sand somewhere. And we said it would be a monumental project in itself to go back to all of our historical information and try to scan that into our HIM. So we decided to make that a no-go at this time. This is what I've been working on for the past few years, the scanning and archiving piece of it. So the question I've asked myself numerous times is how do we control, capture, and reduce paper remaining after a clinical online documentation project? Western Health has recently completed a COD project, or nursing documentation, which was a fairly substantial project, and we rolled it out across the entire region. So my question was, once this is rolled out and nursing are doing their documentation directly into our Meditech system, how do I get rid of the paper that's left over from this project? How do I control it? How do I determine whether or not it needs to exist? If it does need to exist, how do I capture it and get that into the electronic system as well? That led us down the road of Meditech scanning and archiving. Currently, we're running off of a single instance of Meditech Magic 564. We are upgrading to 567 in 2 months' time. So the Meditech scanning and archiving tools were the obvious choice. We had no interest in going third-party for this. We have Meditech. We like Meditech. There's no reason not to go with Meditech for something like this. For those of you who don't have it or not completely familiar with it, Meditech tends to implement this in 2 phases, archiving first, followed by scanning. So the archiving is basically, you can set up the archive to automatically pull information from various modules and plot those over into the Meditech eChart, or the electronic chart. The scanning piece is what we traditionally think of papers coming back to health records or to a central scanning location and then manually being fed through a scanner. So the archiving is automatic, behind the scenes. Once it's set up, you never need to know if it's there or not there. You just assume it's always working. And they set that up for us in 2013. And the scanning piece was about 12 months after that. So they set you up the archive and they leave, they come back, and you go through the batch scanning. One of the questions that came up was, where are we going to do our scanning? And some facilities allow scanning at point of care, so nursing stations, ward clerks, et cetera, et cetera. We decided that we wanted to have control of that process Not because we're control freaks, but just from data quality and standardizing processes and whatnot, we decided that all the papers now typically come back to health records for filing, so it only makes sense to continue that piece and have them all come back to health records for scanning. We also made a significant decision to do no back scanning of historical data, as I mentioned before. However, I put a few stars by that. Although we've decided not to do any scanning of our historical data, we have the ability now, since we've turned on our forms project, to back scan to day one of the forms going live. And why that's important, we'll talk about it a little later on. So if I turn on my scanning in January of this year upcoming, I will be able to go back as far as March of the previous year when we turn on our form software. So although not quote, quote, historical data, back to day one of our forms. The scanning and archiving Meditech relies on barcoding. And all of our forms that we have existing were just standard, you know, 1-part, 2-part, 3-part forms with no barcodes. So we had to get some. So here's the thing I'd like to toss out to anyone I talk to about this. While it is possible that you can do the Meditech scanning and archiving rollout without having a forms barcoding system in place, I will tell you it will make your life much simpler if you tackle the issue of getting your forms inline, standardized, and barcoded first. Our dealings with Meditech have been very, very easy, very streamlined since all this has been taken care of. When they come and do batch scanning, they dedicate approximately at least a half a day or a full day going over your forms and they're kind of informing you of how the barcode should work, because although you can put any variety of 100 different barcodes on a form, Meditech currently only reads 2 different types of barcodes. So they spend half a day going through that. We didn't have to do any of that because when Meditech showed up on site, our forms were already inline, standardized, and barcoded, and tested, and ready to go. So they were quite impressed with that, and that allowed us to push through a lot of the issues that some other facilities have had in the past. And you're not feeling rushed by taking your time and doing it this way. You're not going out to Meditech and saying, I need the ability to scan my records, and then realizing, oh no, I've got 3 different types of forms for this. They should be standardized. I have no barcodes. How are we going to do this? And then your facility or your organization goes into panic mode trying to get everything in line. So when we went down this road, and granted we took our time, we made a list of what we wanted to get out of a form solution. We wanted something that was very easy to use. We wanted something that was easy to use in terms of the super user, easy in terms to use for the administrator, and also for the end user as well. Because we are allowing this to be used not only by health records, but we'll talk about it a little later on, nursing staff, ward clerks, physicians, anyone has the ability to go in and tap into this form system now. So you want something that's easy to use across your entire organization. We also wanted something that had very little to no IT support required. Our IT team here in Western Health are extremely effective at what they do. However, they're quite small and stretched thin across a variety of different projects. So we didn't want anything that was going to be extremely taxing on that department, either in terms of initial setup or support after go live. If we were going to toss this money at a solution, we wanted the ability to expand that solution to other areas should we deem it necessary. And naturally, we wanted something that worked with Meditech. If it didn't work with Meditech, it served no purpose to us. And a vendor with good market presence. And what I mean there is that we wanted someone who we could find in the market that's been around for a while. Although it's not the end of the world, we didn't feel that we wanted to be any vendor's guinea pig site to try a new product or a new tool. We wanted something that we knew was reliable, we knew that other people had, and was working well for them. And as a bonus, we wanted something that had a very significant design tool. So in 2010, we brought a Dell consultant on site to do a readiness assessment for us to tell us what we needed to do and how close we were to being able to start rolling out a scanning, archiving, and form solution. This came just after the announcement of the new facility and the decreased size that we were going to have. So we started the ball rolling quite early. For those of you not familiar with the Canadian healthcare system, the 3-year budget tender process is typical for something of this magnitude. You know, you may go to the government and say, I need $350,000 to do this project. They may say no, they may give you a piece of it, they may give you all of it. For us, it took a couple of years to get the funding approved to go down this route, at which point it took us probably another 3 to 4 months to design the tender and go through the whole tender and selection process. So for us, it's sometimes a bit of a slow, dragged-out process. Nonetheless, we ended up with 5 bidders on our tender, and we shortlisted 2 to come to Western Health and do demos. And after all that was said and done, in the mid-2014, we decided that we were going to work with Access eForms, or EFM. So what about this company drew us to them? Well, they had a mix of on-demand and web-based offerings. We tend now, when we're dealing with third-party vendors, we kind of lean towards web offerings if we can. This product had extremely light and flexible IT requirements, and we realized how important that was, as I mentioned in our list of requirements. It had huge enterprise-wide expansion opportunities. Worked well with Meditech. They've been around for a while. And we realized that if we went down this way, we had a future wish list of things that they have that we would like to have if we ever got any more money and the government allowed us to continue. And another thing, we actually had seen this product in work in 2010. For those of you who know your Canadian geography, the entire province of Nova Scotia, which is also on Canada's east coast, uses Access eForms as a provincial forms management tool. So in 2010, my director and I, we went over there to a facility and we looked at this, right in the middle of health records, how it would work, right in terms from registration to forms printout to return to scanning to how the barcodes read and end up in the e-chart, and we were quite impressed. So what did we buy? And this is where at some point I'm going to start tossing out some acronyms that you're going to hear me use throughout the rest of this presentation. The IFS, which is the Intelligent Form Suite. I'm going to dive into this a little as we go through, but basically is the brains or the logic or the automated piece of what we've purchased. The EFR is the web-based form repository or electronic forms repository. It's where you go and find forms that you need, just the same as now if your staff or yourself go to a filing cabinet and pull out a form out of a folder. We also bought direct integration into scanning and archiving, and the conversion tool, 50 document units, and seats on Access University. They sent us back to school. So the IFS, the extremely logic-based part of what we purchased. What the IFS does is basically Meditech doesn't even know it's there. The IFS server or logic server exists downstream of Meditech, and Meditech perceives it only as a printer. So in the course of doing a registration, and the clerk hits print or file or whatnot, and sends that print message to this quote printer, which is actually the server, and then based on customer-defined conditions and logic statements, the IFS server will then say, I need this form, this form, this form, and I need it to go to this location, and this location. Your registration staff see no difference in terms of what they do. The current process continues, they hit file, they move on to the next patient, and everything is taken care of by the IFS server. And when I say customer-defined conditions, I mean that you can define logic based on any element coming down in that data stream. For example, and I'm going to show you how some of our data stream works shortly, but if you can think of an ER registration, and during the process of your ER registration, the clerk hits sex M for male. We've seen instances where the image graphic that prints out on your ER record is a male, F is female. If age is less than 13, image of a child would print off. We've currently set it up so that if the patient's province does not equal Newfoundland, then an automatic interprovincial agreement form, which is a finance form, prints off. If the country equals non-resident of Canada, then a self-bill form, another finance form, automatically prints off. So the clerk doesn't have to remember to go find these forms and fill them out. They're automatically generated when she does that registration. Let me just take a minute here to show you how, just a quick snapshot of how we've set up some of our logic. So on the right here you see just this typical standard input file, and every one of these yellow blocks you can build logic up, anything you see here. Just a quick example just to show how this works. So let's say, for example, ER registration at secondary sites, Thomas Roddick, where I am. So what does it look for? The print stream comes to the printer, and the first thing it looks for is it a reg ER type. So is the registration category ER? Yes, we continue down the tree. No, nothing happens. So yes, it's a reg ER. Is the location str.er? Yes, we continue. So on printer str.emit P1, we automatically print the mirror's top sheet if the clerk decides to choose that printer. If the clerk says, leaves the printer field blank at the end of it and just hits enter and follows on through, the top sheets will automatically print, if it's blank, to here, or we can choose any printer of our choosing. So the two choices you have when you deal with the IFS is what I call hard coding. So we can eliminate printers from this altogether, and we can say, if this category is met and this location is met, we print the forms to printer X, and that will never change. We realized here that in terms of our small site and different ways of doing workflow, that hard coding forms could lead us into trouble. So what we did is we still allowed the registration clerk to be able to enter a printer at the end. So it's print on prompt is what Access would call it. Let me get back up here. Now this is my way. Anywho. Hard coding, oh, there we go. So print and prompt. And we've set this up so that for any registration category, whether it be clinical, an inpatient admission, an ER registration, surgical daycare, recurring, we've built logic based on all those conditions to say, if this patient registers with this registration category to this location, print these forms in these quantities. So you can not only choose the form, you can choose the quantities. This is just a location for SDC at our main facility. If this is the location, the risk labels. So we were always using automated generated risk labels. We've just incorporated it into this tool and basically made our risk labels a form that was automatically generated for every registration. That's just a quick snapshot of how some of the logic works. That will have you scratching your head, maybe beating your head against the wall a little bit to figure out exactly how all that works. What I recommend is you start from the end and you basically say, if the patient goes to this location, what forms do they need? And once you have that figured out, you take a few steps backwards and you figure out then your logic that you would need to get to that end result. The EFR. Now, the EFR, as I said before, is the Electronic Forms Repository. I also call it the Electronic Filing Cabinet. We all know that we have our nursing stations, our various departments, we have drawers and cabinets and just filled with a variety of different types of forms. Some currently in use, some that haven't been used in years, some that no one even knew existed. This tool is meant to eliminate all of that for us here in Western Health. EFR comes in two options, web versus client. We are running what I call a hybrid setup. So we are web everywhere except for registration. And the reason for that is that the client allows you to continue using EFR during a downtime event, whereas the web does not have that functionality. So we said that if we are in a downtime event and someone comes to our facility, that has never been there before. That's the kicker. Because if you've been there once, you automatically exist in the EFR and you can be pulled back up. The downtime ability of the EFR will still allow that patient to be entered, and you'll still be able to generate forms for that patient, even during the downtime event. The EFR is extremely visible. It's what your end user sees the most. However, it is much simpler to set up than the IFS. In terms of time and effort, we probably spent 75% of our time thus far with Access working on the IFS, and only 25% of the time working on the EFR. And the EFR is much, much more visible. It's what everyone sees and thinks of when we are talking about our forms tool. No one quite realizes exactly all the logic and workings that had to go into the IFS behind the scenes to make those forms automatically print upon registration. This is just a screenshot. Let's just go back to this one for a second. This is a screenshot of my Access, which as a super user, I tend to have more of this than the normal user would see. So a ward clerk or a nurse on the floor, when they would log in, all they would see was this e-repository. And within that, they have three choices. They can search for patients, they can view patients, or they can select forms. We can set up a user such that when they log into the EFR, we can default them to a particular location. So if we have a nurse on 3A, I can set her up so that when she logs in, she only sees patients associated with Area 3A. It makes life simpler for our end users because they don't have to worry about filtering through facilities and locations to get to a patient list. They can immediately log in, they have their patient in front of them, and they can continue on. The EFR, I tell everyone, is kind of like online shopping. If you can do online shopping, if you can go on Amazon and you can order a book, or you can go on and buy Christmas gifts for your wife or husband, then you can use the EFR. When I say that it takes literally 5 minutes to teach a frontline nurse how to use this tool, it is exactly that simple. They log in, because remember, I've already set them up with their default location. So when they log in, they go right to the patient list of where they work. They choose their patient, they choose a form from our form groups, and they choose a printer from a drop-down list, and they hit process. And it's simple as that. So a three-step process. Choose your patient, choose your form, choose your printer. Like that. Oh yeah, it's right there. Online shopping. So if you can buy a book on Amazon, you can use the EFR. No one believes me when I tell them that, but when you start rolling this out, if you do, and start teaching your staff, remember that I told you it was that simple. Integration into scanning and archiving. This is direct integration. So we all have instances of forms that we don't actually put ink on. And this is part of the thing you need to think of at the beginning. If you're going down this route, I have these forms that I use when this patient arrives. Question 1. Are all those forms accurate? Question 2, do I actually need those forms to be printed? Does anyone actually write on this form? So is it a consent? Is it an instruction sheet? Is it just a notice to patients? Is it something that they read and it just stays with the chart to show that it actually printed off? If you have forms along those lines, you don't actually need to print them, put a barcode on them, turn around and send them back to health records for scanning. The direct integration will actually send a copy of that upon registration directly into your eChart, mapped to the appropriate location. So it just takes one less piece of paper out of the hands of a nurse or a physician, or out of the chart. One less thing that your end staff have to turn around and scan back into. This is very limited for us right now. As I said, where we are very paper heavy, we tend to put ink on a lot of things. I'm going to talk about Passport a little later on, but this direct integration and being able just to send copies of records directly into the eChart without actually having to print them is going to become much more useful as we expand with the Passport tool. Form conversion tool. So you're saying, Ryan, we've got these 50 forms. Am I going to send these off and get them made? And you know, Access design team, which are really good, by the way. You know, they're going to take this, and it's going to be a couple of weeks before I get them back. Oh, I forgot one. Now is it going to take 2 weeks to get this one done? No, you can do it yourself. If you have the e-conversion tool and they show you how to use it, any existing PDF or Word document, you can just put into the IFS, the design tool of the IFS, sorry, and convert it. And it comes over roughly, I want to say, 80, 85% complete, depending on the quality of your starting document. And this, as you can imagine, saves a huge amount of time from having to take and design that form from scratch in the design tool. If you use this effectively, and you have a catalog of forms for any particular department, some you send off to design by the Access team, and the rest you do yourself, you could very easily get a full department into the EFR very, very quickly. A bonus of purchasing Access was that they allowed us to use their forms library. And what that means is that I have a disk that has literally 10, 13,000 forms that I can take, use, modify as I see fit. These are forms that other facilities may have designed in the past that have become part of Access's forms library. They're all de-identified, of course, but if I need to design a new form, first thing I do is I go to the forms library and I see if it's already existing or something that's really close. I pull that up, change a few fields, move a box, move a line, add a box, and boom, my new form is done in a fraction of the time. So you can imagine if you partner the forms library with the e-convert tool, it's an extremely powerful combination, and what you can do with that is almost limitless. Well, the training and support offered by Access, not typical in compared to some vendors and how they've trained us in the past. Outside of the sales pitch and the sales team, the demos, they didn't actually come on site to teach us how to use their tool. They actually gave us seats on the Access University site and then gave us access to the relevant courses. So I was able to take my time and learn how to use the EFR, learn how to use the IFS design tool at my own speed over the course of a week or 2 weeks, compared to having to force it all in your head during the one day that a rep would be on site with you. Courses are extremely relevant. Everything is accompanied by a video showing you exactly what you need to be doing in the software while you're watching it. The manuals, again, are also comprehensive, and I recommend that if you're ever going to do this, that you print those off and keep them handy next to you in a backup. And there's absolutely zero pressure. No one calls you up and say, hey, Ryan, listen, did you do EFR 1 yet? Because, you guys got to get this figured out soon, because, we're soon going to cut the rope and leave you at support. They've been extremely, extremely understanding of how we work and how we operate, and there's been zero pressure from the Access side during implementation, pre-implementation, rollout, and we still have not yet actually completely moved over to support. And they won't force us to do that until we're absolutely sure that we're ready to move to support. So we know we have a support system in place. It's a typical ticket system. However, I have not yet used it because we're still dealing with our implementation team, which is great, by the way. So I don't want you to think that this has been a wonderful journey filled with flowers and sunshine and hopping and skipping down a yellow brick road. As with any project, a few things have popped up that have kind of caused us to stop, scratch our head, or stop and realize, what, we might need to take a few steps back on this one. The first one, expanded circle of stakeholders. Up until a certain point, this project was handled directly in the IM department, mainly by myself, the manager of the software for Western Health, and our director. Once we reached a certain point and we were ready to start rolling this out to the organization and showing them what we could do with it, we started to involve other stakeholders, so managers and VPs from other branches and departments, other end users. And as you can imagine, as that circle of stakeholders expanded, the questions that arose, the potential issues that arose, workflow considerations that we had not made, end flow considerations that we didn't even dream of, because we're not nursing, so a nursing manager comes in, looks at it, and says this can't work because we need this to do it this way, things such as that. So it slowed us down a little bit. We were moving quite fast until we reached that point, and then we had to kind of slow down and say we really need to take our time now and make sure we do this right for the various end users that we're giving this to. There was a certain level of reluctance to change, of course, which is natural for any project. You would be surprised at how hard someone wants to hold on to that piece of paper and not alter it in any way, shape, or form. Some of the forms we were using were barely legible because they were photocopy of a photocopy going back 5, 10 years. So the only reason you knew what was on it is that the nurse who was using it 10 years ago was still employed with you, and she knew what that box actually said when the form first showed up 10 years ago. We are a multi-facility organization, so we had instances where in facility A you had a type of form, and you would assume that the same form existed in facility B, C, and D. And the forms did exist, but they looked completely different, or didn't exist in the same format, or didn't exist at all. We even had instances of historical forms pre-consolidation. Western Health arose from the consolidation of 2 other hospital boards back in the mid-90s, and or actually the end of the 90s. And we actually found forms that had the logos and headers from the pre-consolidated boards still in use. So it gave us an opportunity to clean up some of these outliers. But it did force us to slow down and realize that, if we change a form at facility A, we can't assume that B, C, and D are just going to jump on board because they've been using a different form all these past number of years. Another added bonus or opportunity or issue, however you want to look at it, we had to do a form ID overhaul. And I'm going to talk about it on the next slide. But we basically had to change how all of our forms were identified throughout the organization. And we had to push our go live, which was originally scheduled for January. We had to push it back to March. And that was basically for hardware issues. And the reason being is that the province of Newfoundland recently decided to go for a sole provider of managed print solutions, and Xerox won that contract for a provincial level. So all new printers and managed print devices have to be Xerox. So when we had to go to the market to get printers to handle various types of media and upgrade some of the printers that were in our nursing stations, we had to go to a Xerox machine. So we basically turned this project into a managed print rollout project as well. And the transition between our current HP printers to the new Xerox printers were not flawless, to say the least. There have been some issues. So the form ID change. All of our forms in Western Health existed in the format of 900-123 or 900-456, et cetera, I'm sure there was a reason, but I'm not entirely sure what the 900 3 digits meant, or how they ever arose, or what was supposed to happen after you hit 900-999. It'll say C form, whatever. And if you go into the EFR to look for that form, or if you go into Meditech's eChart to look for that form, they will all now have the same ID. So we've changed it such that we have a W for Western Health dash alpha 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 dash number. The reason we did it that way, again, thinking into the future, that if the rest of the province decides to move with a forms project similar to this, and if Newfoundland ever moves to a single instance of Meditech, we would need a way to identify our form in the eChart compared to an Eastern Health or Essential Health form. So that's why we use the W. The dash alpha 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 means the department, so the ownership of that form. Who owns that form? Is it an OR form? Is it an ED form? Is it an OBS? Is it an inpatient? And then dash number, number, number. So it allows us to have a bit more flexibility and better be able to control our forms across the spectrum of the organization. And what we've done is we've reflected those form departments or form groups back into the EFR. So that if you are searching through the electronics filing cabinet and you're looking for a maternal newborn form, you go into the form group maternal newborn, and all the forms you see listed will be by title, but all their form IDs will be W-MNB-001, 002, 003, et cetera, et cetera. So where are we now? Well, like I said, we went live with the IFS first in March 2015. As you remember, the IFS was the automated piece. So when we turned that on, forms automatically start spitting out at end locations once the registration was done. At that time, here at the secondary site, I also allowed the OR to go live with the EFR. That was in terms of reason for that, was that it's a smaller department. They are very keen on using this new product, and it allowed them to use, get rid of, their old worn out OR packets, so a local anesthetic packet or a GA packet. Once the patient registered, the clerk was able to go in and print off the 8-page packet that would be needed for that OR that day, and they'd already be barcoded and labeled with demographics and partially filled in, and it saved nursing a bit of time. And they loved it because it's a cleaner form, it's much more straightforward. Patient registers and shows up, they go in, they print off the forms they need, only what they need, and then they continue on their day. We are continuing to roll out the EFR. We're trying to do it on a department-by-department basis because we're trying to tie in a form cleanup project into it as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk into a department and we're going to say, now that your nurses are directly entering information into Meditech, what forms do you have left over? Come to the table with an example of every form that you can find in your department. Put it into a pile on the table. Now your first question is, which of these forms do you actually still use? Make 2 piles, the keep pile and the throwaway pile. If you haven't used it in 2 years, chances are it's probably either been replaced, there's a revision, or you just don't use it at all anymore. So of the keep pile, let's split it into 2 again. Which forms do you like as they currently are? Meaning all we need to do now is just throw that form through the eConvert tool and be able to put a barcode on the top and bottom of it? Or which forms are you going to take now as this opportunity to revise them to make them the way you want them to be? And that tends to be the piece that slows down a department. So if they have come to the table with 200 forms, 50 get thrown away. They like the way these 30 look, but you know what? We're going to take this opportunity to change these 120 forms and make them look how we want them to look. So that's 120 forms now that we have to redesign or get Access design team to redesign for us. Hopefully that process is going to move quickly once we get into the first department or 2 and kind of work at the kinks and get the ball rolling. We're envisioning that's going to speed up, and hopefully within a year or 2 we'll be able to have a substantial number of our Western Health forms all in the EFR. So now that we have our forms, we have them barcoded, we have them cleaned up, we have them standardized, now we go back to the scanning piece. Meditech came back on site for us almost 2 weeks prior to when we turned on the forms. 2 weeks. It was all around the same time. It lined up almost perfectly. They came back and went through the setup of the batch scanning piece, and we put ourselves in the test mode of that, which we've been doing for the last couple months. We've been going in and working through a few issues, and we've been basically taking test patients, running them through the EFR, printing off test forms, turning around, putting them into a scanner, and popping those right back into the Meditech eChart. And it's been fairly seamless, other than a few issues on Meditech's end. It's went a lot more streamlined than I could ever envision that it would go. So now that we have the forms, they're barcoded, they're standard, we know that Meditech can read them, we're able to control the leftover patient information post our documentation project. How are we going to utilize this tool to expand even further? And a couple of the areas that we've looked at, or a couple of areas that have come to us and tapped us on the shoulder, human resources for one. So employee information, orientation packet, sign-on documents. We all have personnel files in a filing cabinet in the human resource department. Is there a way to somehow have those exist electronically and somehow use this forms tool to assist in that? Medical services, physician accreditation, and other documents. Again, similar to what we would do in human resources, but from a physician point of view. Finance, as I mentioned, we already automatically generate some finance forms that we can then turn around in health records and scan directly into the e-chart. But is there a way to expand within the finance department to allow them to get rid of some of the boxes of paper that they generate? And community health. Right now, we exist only in 2 of our main hospitals, and we have a substantial amount of work that gets done outside of the acute care setting into a population or a community health setting. So ideally, we'd look at a way to use these tools to alleviate some of their concerns as well. In terms of the software itself, as I mentioned, just because we bought a few pieces of the pie didn't mean that that's all that they had. They have a very substantial electronic signature piece. We recognized the value of that, but at the time, that wasn't actually highest on our list of what we could do with this. Here in Canada, we don't tend to have our patients sign as much as some of our American counterparts. So while I see a huge need for electronic signatures in a U.S. setting, we could better spend any potential future monies somewhere else and expanding elsewhere, such as expanding this solution into our clinics, using it to integrate clinical device data. So Access has something called the UDP, or a device portal, where we could tie in EKG machines, fetal monitoring machines, and instead of having that machine spit out 6 feet of paper, directly send that information over to Meditech via the image portal. And web-based forms completion. My question at the beginning was, how do I control the paper that is left over? I've soon realized that if the paper didn't exist at all, I wouldn't really need to have to scan it. So this is what led me back to the Access table, and I learned of a tool called Passport, which is basically, they don't print it. It's all fully 100% electronic forms that you fill in online and send it where it needs to go, whether that be to a physician, to a patient, to a booking office, whatnot. And there's never a need to print it off, to ink it, and then turn around and scan it. Here's what the Passport kind of looks like. It launches directly from your EFR. So there's nothing new there for your end users. The only difference is that the end user would see a little icon here on the other side that would say, hey, this patient has e-forms that either require action or just for you to go and view. The Passport tool I see as being a huge step forward now that we've got the IFS under control and the EFR starting to roll out. If we can immediately go on the heels of this and roll out the full 100% electronic forms, I see huge opportunities to eliminate paper completely. Because some people will look and say, well, you're scanning and you're using these tools, but you're still generating a lot of paper. And yes, we are. We're still generating just as much paper as we did 3 months ago. The only advantage is I'm going to be able to take that paper and not have to file it and keep it on a shelf or keep it in a box or pay a storage company to hold my 1,000 boxes of historical information. I'm going to be able to take that record, scan it, and then get rid of it. This tool will allow me to not even print it at all. So this is extremely new for us. We've purchased it, and we've purchased it provincially, but we haven't fully installed it yet and rolled it out. Western Health is currently the only ones using the Access tool at all. Another health authority is kind of looking at it. But everyone recognizes the benefit of this passport tool and what it can do. Me being inside in terms of the rollout of the IFS and the EFR, I went to Access and say, hey guys, listen, while we're working on this and rolling out the tools we currently have, any chance that I can get your passport designer and play with it for a while and just get my head wrapped around exactly how simple it is to make electronic forms? And of course, these guys are like, hey, sure, here, we'll give it to you. You go play with it, and if you have any questions, let us know. So they signed me back up to Access University, gave me a couple more courses that I needed to do, gave me the new designer, and I started making forms. I am not IT trained in any way, shape, or form. But in the 2 weeks that I was playing with the passport tool, or they call it Formata, I made 3 forms in literally 2 weeks. This one was made by the Access team. I made this one with the anticipation that, let's just say I go visit my GP or family physician, and typically the process, the way it works here now, is that if the GP wants to send me for blood work, for x-rays, or to a specialist, they pull a piece of paper off their shelf, they handwrite it, fill it out, they either give it to me, say, bring this to the hospital, or take this, and when the specialist calls you with an appointment, bring it with you, or I'm going to fax this to the specialist physician myself. I said, what if the physician, while sitting with you in his office, had the ability to fill out this form as he was going through, and then automatically sending this to whoever it needed to go to, eliminating the need of paper at all, eliminating the need of the patient having to keep this, and being automatically sent to the hospital, so that once you showed up to the hospital or the clinic to register, this would already be there waiting for you. And I thought, you know what, that's a pretty novel idea and a really big step forward to help us move towards where we want to be in terms of a completely electronic world. But as you can see, this is a very straightforward form. It's extremely user-friendly in working the passport tool. I can't show you the exact workings of how the print and the sign function works, because that's the piece we haven't installed yet. But basically, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I'm sending patient X to see Dr. Y. I fill out all the information, current meds, any recent test result, any other comments I want to make. This is me, and I hit sign. As soon as I hit sign, it fills out, and we can build it such that, depending on what physician I chose up here, it automatically goes to him, and he gets a warning saying, hey, Dr. X, you've got an electronic referral from Dr. Y. Please go in and action it. Doctor opens it up, reads the referral. Am I going to accept this patient? Sure, let's give him an appointment on tomorrow. If it's a clinic with various physicians, you get to put in the physician that you want. Prior to appointment, please have the following test done, repeat INR, et cetera, and then the choice, we will contact patient, have patient contact us, et cetera, et cetera. Specialist hits sign. That goes back then to the referring physician to let them know that, hey, listen, we've got your referral. We are going to accept your patient. Here's the appointment. All those steps right now for us take a very long time to do. We run into instances where specialists say they didn't get the form, or the GP forgets to do it, or the patient loses their requisition. It's very prone to failure at various points. While this won't solve all those problems, it streamlines some of the functionality and allows us to move away from generating paper for everything. And it doesn't only have to be clinically related. Another one that I've worked on here is a network access form. So if I've got a new employee coming on and they need access, so I've got a new user, job title, whatever, and I want this employee to have access to email. I want them to have access to certain shared folders. They need other third-party, fusion dictation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Who else in the organization has similar access? And what I can do is I can send this to the employee, have them fill out the rest. So you know what? I realize that I'm basically signing that any of this foolishness that I do or don't do would constitute a breach, which I'm held accountable. The employee can sign, the manager can sign, and you can route it directly to IT from anywhere in the world. So some of those features I've been looking at kind of on the side, behind the scenes, as we're rolling out the rest of the Access tools. You know, while the iron is hot, am I able to push through some of these workflows and allow us to move completely to 100% electronic forms? Whoops, sorry. Current slide. That's a quick look at Passport and where I want it to go and how I want it to work. Now, Kiffer is probably one that can show you the more detailed work of Passport and what it actually can do, because I don't have it fully installed yet. But from what I've seen and what I've been able to do with it so far, needless to say, I'm quite excited. And my boss is basically giving me free rein to say, hey, go play with this, see what you can do with it, and we'll talk about some opportunities to roll this through once we get ready. So after all the talking I've done today, what are some of the key things you need to keep in mind? And this first one is very interesting. It says have a forms committee. And that seems like common sense, and you most likely already have a forms committee in place. If not, you're probably thinking about it. Western Health does not have a forms committee, nor do I think we're going to use one. People higher up the ladder than myself have decided that we're going to use an approach that each branch takes ownership of their own forms, and will designate someone within their group to be responsible for any sort of revisions and maintenance of a form, and then be the one responsible to send that to our form design team or send it off for access for work. I see pros and cons to each method, whether you use a forms committee or not. Personally, I think the forms committee is the best way to go, because you have one entity that is oversight and be able to control what forms are coming from various departments. If you do have a forms committee, I would recommend that HIM either chairs or at least co-chairs that committee, because at the end of the day, HIM would be the source to know exactly what is required to be on a patient's chart. And if it doesn't need to be on a patient's chart, then it doesn't need to be scanned, and then it doesn't need to be barcoded, and you save yourself a lot of work. So, you know, allow HIM to take some form of leadership role on that committee. Effectively utilize your change manager and management team, of course. We all know anytime we go down one of these routes or do one of these projects that the sooner we can get team to buy in, end users or directors, life becomes much simpler. And I find our change manager here is a very good liaison with the physician group and able to deal with them and their questions and their concerns very easily. If you don't already have it, you should probably get some senior team buy-in. Although, you know, here in Canada, that rarely happens without senior team buy-in, because we usually have to go up the ladder and ask for the 300 or 400 or however many money we need. So senior team is usually aware before we get there. And I always tell people, when they get bogged down with the details, just stop and think about the end of the road. Where do you want to be? For us, we knew exactly where we wanted to be, and we knew exactly how much square footage we were given to get to where we needed to be. So these are the steps I've done so far to get there. What else do I need to do to get me to the end of that tunnel? Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So that's all I have to say today. For anyone curious, there is my contact information. I'm very open to talking about what we've done, what we would like to do, and how things have worked here. I know some aspects of this may seem like a sales pitch, but our workings with Access so far have been extremely simple, I guess. I don't want to mean that any way other than it is. Very easy, simple group to deal with. Like I said, no pressure, no forcing us to do things we don't want to do. If we make a decision, they're behind us regardless of which way we go, and it makes it the whole experience of working on this project very, very simple. So if you've got questions that you want to ask me about working with Access offline that you don't want Kiffer or Lindsay to hear or anyone else, I'll answer those too. Other than that, I am going to turn this over now to a question and answer period and see what we can do. Kiffer, are you still with us?
Yeah, I am here. Thanks so much, Ron. I really appreciate that. You knocked it out of the park again. And so definitely want to open it up for questions. I'm sure you guys have been entering those in throughout the presentation. I believe Lindsay has been gathering those, and so I'll open it up and allow her to ask those questions and direct it to the appropriate person, and we'll address those. I know we're a bit over time, just a little bit, so we'll get through these and then let you guys go on your way. But Lindsay?
Yes, we had a couple of questions come in, so thanks, Ryan, for the presentation. The first question is directed, I think, for you, Kiffer. States, Ryan is using Access with Meditech. Can it be used with other systems?
That's a great question. So yes, it can. We have other customers that are using it with Cerner, Epic, all the other different flavors out there that facilities have. And so, for the IFS, it's just that print stream, and then for the EFR and the passport piece, it's really that standard HL7 that we're receiving to populate that patient information. As well as on the passport side, there's some connectors that we can build and have available into other systems that are maybe outside of the clinical space, not necessarily related to a patient, but related to employees. So those HR systems that you guys may have, we can connect to those as well and leverage some existing information that you guys have to auto-populate into some of those forms. So the answer, yes, we can definitely work with additional systems.
Okay, the next question is it possible to give us a quick glimpse of the EMR where all this information gets displayed and how end users review the details?
So the Meditech eChart or the EFR? I'm sorry, which one were you talking about, Lindsay?
The glimpse of the eChart.
Yeah, I can show the eChart. Let me get into that for a second.
Okay, thank you.
I can show you the eChart through our Meditech test side. We haven't moved over to live yet. Our go live or our move over is going to be first couple of weeks in September. But I can go into so we run it through our MRI, and is it in here? I never remember where it is. Hold on. Here it is, electronic chart routines. My electronic charts. So what you would do, and keep in the back of your mind that for those of you online who use Meditech, PCI, of course, is our go-to source of information. The eChart, or the MRM, was initially designed to be used within the health records department to assist coders and other staff members that currently would have to go pull a physical chart off a shelf, leaf through it page by page. This kind of replaces that process. So it allows you to search. You can search any of these. You can open them up. And then you can search for records by account. So you don't get the full blob of, you can, but you don't have to get the full blob of every scan image on that client for however long you've been doing it. If you just wanted to see a face sheet from an ER registration, you could just pull that up. And this is how it would look. Part of what Meditech will get you to do is dictionary builds. So you spend a lot of time building your category and subcategory, and also tying the forms into the location. So you build your categories, you build any subcategories you want, and then you actually have to go in and physically say that this form, which is, I don't know if it's going to allow me to view it and test. No. it would say, Form W-ADM-1 is in category admission info, subcategory consent forms. And that would continue on for however many scan images you have on that account. I hope that is kind of what you were looking for.
Thanks so much, Lindsay, Pimi. I think that was all the primary questions that we had that were entered in. Obviously, I know you guys may jump off and other questions may come to mind. I know Ryan showed our contact information on there, and we'll be sending out a recorded copy of this presentation to everyone that registered for the webinar as well. So you guys will have that, and that will be some additional contact information if you guys have more questions about what we covered today. I do want to say thank you to Ryan. Just really appreciate one, you guys as a customer, two, your willingness to jump on and tell your story with Access and what you guys have done, what you're accomplishing, and what you're looking to accomplish down the road with some of the Passport web-based form pieces. We're pretty excited to see what you guys can do with that. Just really appreciate your time. Everyone else on the webinar, I know we went over a little bit today, but I wanted to say a thank you for attending. I hope you guys learned some exciting things here with Ryan. And like I said, again, if you have any questions or things that pop up, please feel free to reach out. All right. Lindsay, thanks so much for fielding the questions. Ryan, man, thanks again. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll be in touch. Thanks. Bye.
All right, everybody have a great day. Thank you.